Collective consciousness is single-handedly the most important quantum mechanics concept to date. This is one of the key aspects to understanding our experience on Earth, the way we cognitively think and receive information, where our ideas come from, the way our perceptions are formed, and how we have become the people that we are today. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Yasmin. I'm a psychic medium, a channeler, and in this video, you'll get the full experience of both the educational lecture aspect as well as the channeling aspect of a quantum teaching that I do every week on different quantum theory mechanics topics. And this week, we are going to be talking about collective consciousness. Now, I have done some research on this because I wanted to get the scientific aspect. Some of you guys already know I have 10 plus years of healthcare experience, and this has been something that is sort of a mystery within quantum mysticism, if you will, because although I understand the esoteric aspect, the science aspect is a little bit beyond me, meaning how can I take something that is so broad to our experience on Earth and actually be able to make it as logical for you as possible? So naturally, when I went towards the research, I found very little information for proof on collective consciousness, which explains all the previous videos I've recorded, right? The fact that we know quantum mechanics is the most mysterious of the physics scientific realm because there's so much mystery to it. There's so much unknown elements to it, but we also know that there's continuation of experiments on it. Hadron Collider, CERN, I've talked about this in previous videos, but also as well, Elon Musk's study of consciousness and the brain using his creation of the Neuralink. So I will continue to mention some of these things over and over again in every video as a reminder that the proof is in the pudding. It's there, it exists in the world. And so quantum mechanics is not limited to the scientific aspect of the 3D world. It is expansive of the beyond and the linkage between, right? The bridge between what is out there and what is here. A sociologist named Emil Durkheim actually concluded that collective consciousness is really just the relation of people, their cultures, their beliefs, and how the similarity between those things, right, societal, economical, etc., is sort of what creates the solidarity. And collective consciousness, in essence, is the proof of the one concept, the law of one, which is something that I've talked about in a previous quantum mechanics video. Collective consciousness is essentially sort of like a distributed cognitive theory, how we are able to identify a single item within our brain and then therefore able to see that witnessed outside of us. But the science has proven that the brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what isn't. And so in any given moment, the way that we think, right, the way that we speak, what is going on cognitively, meaning internally within us, our emotions, right, the parts of our right and left brain, what we're thinking and our emotions and feelings comes together to sort of create this outside reality. And science sort of proves that, right, through saying that the brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what isn't, meaning that we are able to sort of formulate this reality outside of us because our brain is thinking something, right? It could be something that is real to our experience, that we've felt, that we've had, and something that isn't. And so, yes, the cognitive piece of collective consciousness is important. That's actually what contributes, while we're alive as humans on Earth, to the egregore of collective consciousness. Thoughts, the ideas, the things that have been both manifested and waiting to manifest. Sort of like the Akashic Record, which is another video that I've talked about. But to start from the ground level, collective consciousness basically states that it is sort of like a single-handed cognitive aspect, right? It is part of the one, meaning that each and every one of us is living within the collective consciousness realm because we are living as individuals. But you know this saying, you become the 5 people that you're around the most. So in that aspect, if you're around a bunch of people who act a certain way, do a bunch of things, behaviors that, for example, are not good for them, right? Let's say they're engaging in lower vibrational behavior, theft, drugs, etc., then you start to become part of that bubble. And so what collective consciousness is stating that we sort of come from that bubble of the all, right? We're an individual living this individual unique experience, but we're coming from the all. We're connected to the all, right? We are part of the all. And so at any given moment, we receive ideas, thoughts that are coming from the collective consciousness. An example that I can give to you all in this moment is how I post every single week on TikTok and on Instagram's School of the Ascending. TikTok would be the better example, a weekly intuition practice video. They're about 2 to 3 minutes long every single week. And I explain how to clear your intuition, how to clear your mind, but also what the prompt is. Can you intuitively guess what sound you're hearing, what sight you see, what texture you feel, okay? Testing these different clairabilities. And every single week without fail, someone is commenting on the video an answer that is not the correct answer that I mentioned at the end of the video, but an answer that other people in the comments happen to answer as well. How is this possible? That someone in China is commenting on my video, and someone in America is commenting on my video, and someone in South Africa is commenting on my video, and all three of these people are locally away from each other, right? They're not in the same location. However, they're answering the question with the same answer that is not the answer, the correct answer. This is an example of collective consciousness. Another example is collective consciousness is very linked to telepathy, and this is something that's very difficult to study. Collective consciousness is linked to telepathy because if you are thinking about someone and then all of a sudden they contact you either that day or a few days later, you are both intuitive, but you are also connected with the collective consciousness. Consciousness meaning you have your own consciousness, but there's an entirety of consciousnesses that exist. And so when you are thinking about someone that you know, and then they message you either again within that day or a few days later, it's an example of, again, the collective, right? The hive, I'm hearing hive mindset, the hive mind. So this is essentially what collective consciousness is. It's that hive mind that always just exists in the background. It's always going to be there. You are still living your individual unique experience, obviously, but the collective consciousness is still always going to be there. It's part of the hive mind. It's part of the all. It's sort of like, for example, when, there is a video that is scaring someone, right? And the news is a good example, okay? Here, mainstream media is talking about a pandemic or a war or some type of natural disaster that's going to hit a bunch of parts in the world. And what they're inciting is fear. They might be, to some degree of their perspective, just sharing the news, but what they're actually doing is inciting fear. And then what happens is the collective consciousness, part of it, who is engaging with the mainstream media, starts to engage with that fear. So they start to kind of succumb to that fear. And then they start to carry that energy. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what isn't. And so as they're kind of conformed to that fear-based energy, they start to create that reality. And so that egregore starts to grow. The egregore of the collective consciousness is sort of like, I'm hearing the mold. Okay, it's like mold on a fruit, right? A basket of fruit that starts to grow mold. It starts with one fruit and then it starts to grow. There's always these elements and aspect of the world around us where the collective consciousness is sort of being disrupted, manipulated, caused to feel this energy of fear, because what happens is when the hive mind changes, it shifts the energy. It's like they're showing me my spirit guides, okay, Archangel Sandalphon, Archangel Michael, Archangel Sandalphon, Archangel Raphael and Gabriel. I feel their energy with me, and Archangel Azrael. So we've got the whole crew here, I see. And it's very fascinating because they're showing me a group of bees, and how, when the queen bee, something happens with the queen bee, the whole hive moves. Or when the queen bee decides to move to a different direction, or a few bees decide to start a new home in another direction, the hive that they were once at is no longer sufficient. Maybe it's been under attack. They start to all move together as a group. Or birds, for example, when it's time, when the seasons change and the birds start to go west, and you see in the sky in some states where the birds are doing that sort of V shape, that's like the hive mind effect, the collective consciousness effect. It's a group, a community, a collective of birds, humans, beings, life forms that are moving together in sort of a unique collective way, if you will. They follow each other. And so while animals sort of exhibit more of a community-based experience than maybe humans do, right? Because we're still living our individual advanced consciousness experience as this human vessel right now, what happens is we're still being impacted with the collective consciousness in some shape or form. Now, you might not be directly impacted, right? It's not to say that you're going to feel someone's pain from Beijing or from I don't know, Malaysia, who's going through trauma in a sweatshop unless you're actually engaging with the content online that is sharing their story. But what collective consciousness is suggestive of is that energies, emotions can travel in groups, such as fear, such as freedom, resilience, strength, things like that. There was an experiment that was actually done where they took a bunch of people to watch a basketball game, and they were tasked with keeping up with how many passes were going between the white team and the black team. So team dressed in white, team dressed in black, playing basketball against each other, how many passes were being thrown. And everyone was just kind of keeping up. But in the middle of the game, a gorilla passed through, someone that was shaped in a gorilla suit, okay? And they started beating on their chest, and then they walked off the basketball court. More than 50% of the people that were watching the basketball game, being tasked to watch how many passes were going between both teams, failed to notice the person in the gorilla suit in the middle of the court beating their chest. And so this is suggestive of when a collective is sort of tasked with a single mission, right? They fail to notice the distraction. And so this is very related to what happens in the world, right? When your attention, the collective's attention, is pulled to a specific direction, they fail to notice the other distraction. The reptilian agenda on this earth, they sort of have this control over these narratives of mainstream media. And so what they're doing is they're trying to manipulate the collective consciousness, the collective essentially, by proving this guerrilla experiment that while humanity is focused on one event, for example, the war in Palestine, there's a whole other disruption going on behind the scenes. Or while one half of the collective is focused on the natural disasters all over the world, the floods, there's a whole other issue going on. Or while other part of the collective is focused on those celebrities that are being called to court or being called out for child trafficking, there's something else going on within our government, within the White House, with our money. So there's different collectives that are around the world, people that are paying attention due to their interest to different things. And so our energy is getting pulled in different directions. All 8 billion people on the planet, which I think there's actually more people on the earth than that are not accounted for, but all 8 billion people statistically numbered are perceiving reality differently. And so if we're each perceiving reality differently, we're each part of the collective in different ways, even though we go through the same lessons and perhaps experiences, pain, love, loss, right? These universal lessons that every soul has to go through, regardless of how advanced you are with your soul or not, you're still going to come across sort of those experiences, right? And sort of that collective part of that hive mindset. And so this is where technology has kind of come through and integrated itself with things like media, TV, etc. It's not bad, good or bad here, but what I'm sharing is the obvious, right? There's certain things in life that pulls each and every one of our attentions based on our upbringing, what our perspectives are, what intrigues and interests us. And so those things that draw our attention in a specific way are actually potentially distractions from something else happening in the world. But it's all about how you look at it, right? It's all about your perspective. And so collective consciousness is neither good or bad. It just is an existence of all the thought forms of consciousness, of all the dreams, ideas that exist. If there's something that's meant to manifest within the consciousness bubble, C for consciousness, and it's an idea that's meant to happen, and it's not materialized in the way that it needs to be brought onto earth, what happens is if it reaches that idea, person A, and person A doesn't use their action energy, their divine masculine inner energy, right? But their right and left brain to facilitate that idea and materialize it in some shape or form in the world, what happens is the collective consciousness, the consciousness bubble ends up bringing it to person B. And person B might use that idea that the consciousness, collective consciousness, is holding in a different way. But again, if something's meant to be materialized in some shape or form, and it's not materialized in the way that it needs to, it gets transferred to someone else. Now, obviously, fate and business ownership is meant to materialize in the way that it needs to for the collective, obviously. And so, if you are meant to deliver something into the world because it is your mission, it is your purpose, you will be given that opportunity. If one person didn't create the United States, it would have happened eventually. Because what was fate in the collective consciousness in creation? Fate was that the United States had to be born at some point. It had to exist at some point. It had to become the United States so that the rest of us could be born in the later years. But if these, colonialists didn't come to America and they chose not to be out of their free will and they chose to go somewhere else, what would have happened? The United States would have eventually still been colonized because the United States was what was written in fate, not the exact person to create it. So I hope that this video helped in some degree. Very basic knowledge here, and of course collective. Until next time, go and grow.